Hello and welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake Lamore, and today's episode we are talking about logistics, in particular trucking logistics. And here to join us to talk about the history of A.N. Weber Logistics, which, as far as we know, is the oldest logistics company in Kankakee County, is Alan Weber himself. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Jake, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So look forward to talking with you about A.N. Weber. We were just talking before we started recording. 76 years at this point.
This is our 76th year in business as A.N. Weber. Started out as A.N. Weber Trucking.
So how far back does it go?
Okay, well, I can actually trace the lineage back to sometime in the 30s, although I don't have an exact date. Good to find out my great uncle in Herscher, Illinois, the guy by the name of Jim Weber, was, I believe, the first trucking Weber. And my grandfather was working for him, and he got killed, Jim did, in the 30s when a dump box fell on him that he was working on. And sometime between the time of that death and 1947, my grandfather split off on his own, got his own authority out of Shabance, and bought a few trucks, and that's the start of the company. The official start is 1947.
Yeah. Wow.
But it goes back really in sometime in the 30s.
Yeah, because he was working for your great uncle. Or
My great uncle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. So you're starting with your grandfather, and then it just gets passed on from generation to generation?
As a matter of fact, we're in our fourth generation right now with my nephew and my son are both running the company now. I'm somewhat semi-retired now. When my grandfather started Shabance, he ended up with a fleet of about 5 trucks, and he moved from his house to when my dad got a gas station, and then from there we moved to Kankakee, and then we moved over to the South Tech building throughout the year. When my grandfather retired, he had all of 5 trucks. My dad at the time had 6, so it was an 11-truck fleet. And I'm a little bit ahead of myself. But my grandfather's business was all hauling stone out of Lehigh.
Okay.
The quarry. And in bad weather, predominantly the winter, you don't run. Well, in 1957, I was born, and I had a lot of medical issues as a baby, and my father couldn't afford to sit all winter, and he had to get some insurance. So he talked his dad into buying him a flatbed, and he went to work for the steel mill in town, building Interstate 57.
Oh, okay.
And that's how we kind of started stretching out longer distances. And he ended up with 6 trucks. They just kept hauling, never shut the truck down, just kept going as the interstate went further and further south. And when my grandfather retired, he sold out to my dad, and it was an 11-truck fleet. Just before COVID, we were at 200 trucks, which put us probably in the top 10% of largest trucking companies in the United States. Now,
I didn't know it was that big.
Yeah. And most people don't. In 1968, my dad, believe it or not, got won in a poker game. True story. My dad always made sure he was in the poker game in Smitty's Tavern in Shabance every Saturday. And in that same game was the traffic manager for A.O. Smith, water heater people. Dad only had flatbeds and dump boxes, and he had no interest in being in a dry van business. But the guy at A.O. Smith was constantly on Dad, why don't you buy some vans and come up and work for us? Well, they bet about it in a poker game. Dad lost. Now, 56 years later, we still haul for A.O. Smith. And to expand on that story further, everybody knows that A.O. Smith moved out of town in 1982, 83. In 1991, Dad and a partner bought that A.O. Smith building, and that is where we now have South Tech, and it is the headquarters for A.N. Weber Incorporated. Now, as A.O. Smith moved to different locales or bought other companies, we kind of followed them. They first went to McBee, South Carolina, and we went down there. And we had a terminal there for a long time until they decided to turn it over to just building commercial water heaters there, which did not need a big fleet. So we sold that building in the late 80s to DuPont. But at that point, they also went over to El Paso, Juarez, Mexico. And we built a terminal there also. And then for a while, they brought in what's called a 3PL, and it reduced our business with A.O. Smith, so we started hauling for other water heater companies as well. At one time, there were 6 water heater companies in the United States. We hauled for 4 of them. But that got us a terminal in Johnson City, Tennessee for American water heater, which A.O. Smith eventually bought. We were there first.
Okay.
And then they bought State Water Heater in Nashville, which I was in the process of putting a terminal there. So today we've still got a terminal in Nashville, Tennessee. Actually, it's a town called Pleasant View, Tennessee. And in our largest terminal, truck size-wise, is in El Paso, Texas.
And don't you have one in Arizona too?
Well, that's a different arm.
Oh, okay.
For a long time, we were brokering some freight out, and that means if I didn't have a truck, but I had a load, I'd hire somebody else. And then about 10 years ago, we decided to get serious in that. And that's when we brought my son back from Las Vegas. He was out there working for the largest logistics company in the world, C.H. Robinson.
Okay.
As far as we're concerned, that's where he went to college. He wasted his party life down at Eastern Illinois. He learned a lot. He learned a lot at C.H. Robinson, and he came back, and that's when we got serious. Todd and I, my nephew, Todd Persee, we decided that we would, just before COVID, we decided if we were going to get really serious about this, we were going to really throw some resources at it. And we actually started downsizing the fleet. We started getting rid of trucks because trucks are getting so expensive, number one, mostly due to COVID. And it's so hard to find good, qualified truck drivers nowadays. There's a nationwide truck driver shortage. We've been fighting it for years, and we decided, let's stop fighting it. So we sold off about 85 trucks and took all of that excess freight that those trucks were hauling, and we call it moving upstairs, which where the logistics office is at. And my son took over a lot of that freight. As a matter of fact, logistics right now today is, in sales-wise, is larger than the truck size.
Okay.
But we've reduced our truck size down to a size that there's 3 or 4 top customers that really depend on us. Obviously, A.O. Smith being the largest. We cannot reduce our fleet any further than we have now. But the really silver lining is the drivers we have now are very good drivers. We can depend on them. Most of them are long-term. We've got drivers that have been with us 30, 35 years, over-the-road truck driver. That's unheard of.
Yeah, and they're going coast to coast, right?
Well,
almost
all over the country.
Yeah,
all over the country. Matter of fact, Saturday I was. What a lot of people don't know is the South-Tech got hit by a tornado this last Friday.
Oh, it did?
It did.
I did not know that.
Yeah, we didn't much report or anything. We've lost quite a bit of roof and including right over the logistics office.
Oh, gosh. Sorry to hear that.
So I stopped in Saturday afternoon to check in on it, and walking by is our most senior driver out of El Paso, Texas. And I think he's been with us about 35 years now, and we just sat and shot the bull, and actually we kind of worked out a few of the world's problems while we were at it, but that's the kind of rapport you can have with people like that. I see Larry all the time. I know him very well, and we have a delightful time talking. It happens that we're both of the same political bent, so that makes it nice for us as well, you know?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But it's nice to have be able to have those conversations, I'm sure, with especially the size company that A.N. Weber is. You can still have those down to earth conversations with your employees.
Oh, definitely. It's doors are always open to our place. Well, we would not, unless there's a meeting going on, we would not allow anybody to close a door on a truck driver or mechanic or any employee for that matter. If they've got an issue, if they got something they want to talk about, we're all in this together. And that's another thing about A.N. Weber. All the Webers were truck drivers. We all drove. We all know what it's like to be a truck driver. It's not an easy life. We know that. So if a man's got an issue, you need to listen to see what the issue is, and he might even have the fix for it. He's got a lot of time to think about that going down the road. He might have the ideal fix,
Yeah. And I guess getting into that now, I mean, how did you get roped into continuing the tradition? Were you happy to step up and be a part of the company, or was your dad like, okay, this is what you're doing, son, and that's it?
Interesting question. It's funny you brought that up. No, actually, to be perfectly honest with you, I wanted to be a cartoonist.
Really? I never would have pegged you for that.
I was accepted into the commercial arts graphic design in Southern Illinois. And if I had gone to college at the time, I'd have been the first Weber to go to college. Well, fate stepped in. My father broke his back in 1975 when I graduated from high school. Matter of fact, he was in a full body cast from his ankle to his neck at our graduation inside the crater down at Central.
Oh,
can you imagine how hot that was?
Oh, God. Yeah, no air conditioning.
So he asked if I would stay back, and he said, you can go to college when you get done, when I get back on my feet, which I did. Well, but by that time, I was kind of used to doing my own thing and the party life, and I was making more money than a guy should have had made at that time. So I didn't go to college at that point, and I just stayed with the company the whole time. And this is my 49th year there.
Wow. So when your dad is in, by the way, how did he break his back? Was it a work accident?
They believe he fell off a roof as a teenager, and they thought that might have been the start of it. He actually broke his back twice, and it just kind of wore away. And then after he got it fixed, somebody ran out in front of him in moments one day, and his knee hit the dashboard and broke it again. So he actually broke it twice.
My gosh, that sounds painful.
Oh, yeah.
So at the time, 1975, you start working at A.N. Weber. You're kind of taking your dad's shoes while he's getting back on his feet. So you're driving then for him, right? Or were you?
Yeah, once he got back on his feet, I wanted to try my hand at driving. And the biggest thing at the time was Chicago Bridge and Iron was building nuclear reactors all around Illinois and Indiana. And that was pretty much my job every day, to go up there and haul these steel plates to these nuclear sites. I wasn't 21 yet, so I'd have to sneak over to the Indiana ones and sneak back. But I did do a lot of long-distance driving. At the time, that was not in our company. We didn't do a lot of long-distance driving. We didn't start that till probably the 80s when we got down there with A.O. Smith and McBee.
Okay.
So I think I hauled one load of water heaters in my life. The rest of it was all flatbed for Chicago Bridge and Iron and various steel mills.
And is it like that today, or is it kind of a big plethora of different?
We are predominantly dry van, probably 95%. Now, the company we did buy in Arizona, which I guess I forgot to go back to that. August of last year, we bought a logistics company. No trucks, just a logistics company they were in Queen Creek, Arizona. And it had nothing to do with the fact that I winter there. It was a good deal to come up, and I was looking for a way to grow the business, because it's going to be tough to do it organically. And this particular business, they happen to do flatbed. So probably the logistics side is closer to 10 or 15% flatbed, whereas the truck side is probably 5 or 6% is all.
Okay.
So most of it is dry van.
And when you say dry van, what is that?
That is just a big box on wheels. Now, for the A.O. Smith freight, we use a bigger box than what most people see on the road. And that's kind of the reason why we've been with A.O. Smith so long. It enables them to double stack the water heaters, whereas you could not do that in a standard size box.
Okay. And you've been working with them so long, you know how it goes, right?
Exactly.
You know how it gets packed and all that.
We pretty much got it down to a science, and it for 45 years of that, the truck driver had to unload those water heaters.
Oh my gosh.
But it's in the last 10 or 11 years, we've switched that situation around, and we're doing various things. The truck driver no longer has to touch the water heaters either.
No, and I feel that's a standard for most trucking outfits nowadays. Truck drivers don't really have to, depending on, well, some I suppose do have to get out of forklift or. I
would seriously doubt there's drivers getting on forklifts, and there are a few deals going where the driver has to help. For example, when the guy's delivering food to a grocery store, I mean, the driver's going to have to do that kind of stuff. But yes, the point you are making is that the truck drivers are finally doing less and less with the actual freight itself.
Yeah,
because that was driving workman's comp rates so high.
Oh, I would imagine so. And, it creates more risk. Oh,
very much so. You know, guys with back issues all the time. Well, we don't get many of that now.
Yeah.
And that's what we like. If a guy's drove all night to get somewhere, he's probably not going to feel like unloading 200 water heaters off a truck, you know?
Probably not.
At least I know I wouldn't. You know?
No, heck no. Absolutely. So I'm sure you yourself, you know, being a truck driver or driving a truck for many years, you've got to have some stories to share. You know, I mean,
most of them are about my ineptitude, I guess.
Because I mean, you have written a book about that, and you do have another book coming out. I guess that's a little bit aside from the logistics company, but
well, I appreciate you bringing that up. In 2010, I wrote a book about a truck driver. The book is called Whipping Post. But with that book, and without getting too technical in the book, I tried to put a truck driver in a light of the average man. You know, while he's out delivering freight 2,000 miles from home, there's all kinds of things happening that most of us not all pretty back at home, and I have an affinity for the drivers. I feel for them, you know. And as a matter of fact, we have a man that works for us. His title is for driver relations, and he is there just to help the driver while he's on the road. You know, maybe his wife is home and the washing machine goes out, and she doesn't know what to do. Well, that's what if the drivers are using that service properly, that's what our guy is there to help them do.
Okay, so he can maybe call someone to get the washing machine fixed or whatever, get a new one.
Or if she's got something that weighs too much, whatever it takes just to help the situation out. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably being a little chauvinistic. We have women truck drivers too.
Yes,
so.
Yes, of course. And I mean, I would imagine you've seen more of those in recent years. More females are taken to the wheel, right? I mean,
it did. About 10 years ago is when it really started to come to fruition at our company, where we were able to get women, especially women that drove on their own. But it appears to me, for whatever reason, that is also waning. I believe that with the exception of one or two, most of the women we have driving for us are husband and wife.
Okay. Yeah, you hear that
Yes.
commonality as well. So did your wife ever drive with you?
Oh, no. Matter of fact, by the time I had met her, I was done driving.
Okay.
So, and I don't know that she's ever been in a truck.
Probably doesn't want to be in one either.
Probably not. Doesn't want to be in one. You're right. And the trucks that I don't even know if I could drive the trucks they have today. When I drove trucks with short noses, or I drove what's called cab overs, where you're sitting on top of the engine and you got no nose in front of you.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
These trucks today, they've got these long noses in front of them, and I don't know how comfortable I would be driving those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little different than having not so much in front of you.
Another point I was going to make about Weber is that we throughout our history we've always done everything local. I mean, for example, we have bought all of our trucks from LeBeau Brothers going back to about 1962 here in town.
Yeah, because they've been around for a long time as well.
We're very loyal to people like that. My father was fond of saying that Wayne Hovey, the late Wayne Hovey, sold trucks to Dad when Dad didn't have money to buy them. So therefore, when he had money to buy them, he bought his trucks from Wayne Hovey. We used the Meyer brothers out of Ashcombe for our tires for about 100 years. I mean, we've been with Peterbilt trucks since 1984. We like to establish good, loyal bonds with our vendors, and probably even though we have terminals in other areas, and really don't do that much freight out of Kankakee, Illinois, probably 90% of our buying is done right here in Kankakee County.
Okay.
And Iroquois County.
And how come you're not really hauling a lot of freight out of Kankakee then?
There's a myriad of issues, reasons for that. A lot of the traffic in Kankakee is controlled out of state at corporate offices, and they tend to go with what they call the big box carriers, the Schneiders and the JB Hunts, and we just kind of missed the boat on a lot of that stuff for a long time, and because we were just, frankly, A.O. Smith and the water heater industry was our primary focus.
Right. And obviously it's still a big chunk of your business as well.
Right. And half our trailers are those big trailers I mentioned previously, which are not conducive to hauling heavy freight, which a lot of the Kankakee type freight is heavy, flooring, tiles, and chemicals and stuff like that. They're just not conducive to those kind of trailers.
Yeah. I'm curious, how does the business side of it work? How do you come up with prices, to charge freight? I'm just curious how the day-to-day goes for a trucking company.
The only thing you're really in control of is the floor.
Uh-huh.
I can't haul any cheaper than that. But the barriers of entry to trucking are such that it's not difficult to get into trucking. It's difficult to stay into trucking, but it's not difficult to get in. So therefore, the shipper has a lot of different options. And usually they're in control of the freight rates. Now, when COVID hit, they lost all control because some of the truckers shut down. We never shut down at all through COVID, nor did what I call the big box carriers. But a lot did, so that diminished the capacity. So therefore, it's all supply and demand is what it is. 2023, there's been more trucks than there's been freight for, so the shippers again have the control on it.
Yeah.
And all you can say is, well, sorry, man, I just can't haul it for that cheap,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and what is there, FTL and LTL, right? Those
Yeah.
are two different, what's the difference between those? Because I know those are common little acronyms that people see here and there.
Good question.
Yeah.
And an LTL is called a less than truckload. And for example, that the headphones we have on, if you want to ship 2 boxes of headphones, you're going to call an LTL carrier. If you want to ship a whole truckload then you're going to call a regular carrier, or what you said, FTL. Historically, LTL companies, they do a lot of what's called spoke and wheel. Everything comes to a central area and divided out. You might have boxes going to Virginia, and you might have boxes going to Chicago, and other boxes going to Dallas. And they put them on trucks going that way, and then those guys might take it 8 hours down the road, and it might get switched out again. Same process. Whereas a truckload, he just picks it up and bang, he goes.
He's done.
He's done.
Yeah.
He just heads that way to where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine LTL my brain just kind of hurts thinking about that because you've got so many different things in one load.
Sure.
Going to so many different places, right? Versus the FTL, you just, it's all the same. It's like, here's, 2,000, 5,000 pizzas or whatever it is, and that's it.
Well, to make it more complicated on the LTL, it might be that if I was an LTL carrier, which logistics does do that, but Weber might haul it. Let's just say the load going to Dallas. Well, Weber might haul it to St. Louis, and then they might have Lemoore Trucking haul it to Little Rock, Arkansas, and then Schneider might haul it from Little Rock to Dallas. So now you're even dividing it up further.
and how do you keep all that straight though? I mean,
ours is all done by, well, I'm sure everybody's done by computer now.
Sure.
And as a matter of fact, we're just now starting to look into AI on something like that as well, which I could write a whole book of what I don't know about that.
Yes.
But
yes.
Before that, before the advent of computers, we used T-cards systems, which you write on a card, you put it in a slot, and before that, it was just on a simple yellow pad. That's how it all started, on a simple yellow pad, keeping track of it. I couldn't tell you how the LTL carriers do it now because I'm not that familiar with.
So Weber doesn't really do LTL.
The Weber trucks do not.
Okay.
The Weber Logistics, which are they're actually two separate companies.
Okay, I did not realize that.
But and there's one management company over the whole thing.
Okay.
And which my nephew actually is. He's the CEO of all the companies.
Gotcha.
Whereas my son is the president of A. and Weber Logistics, which is the company with the bullet right now. They're the ones we're trying to grow.
Well, bringing it up now, what is the difference between trucking and logistics? And because as just an average person, I always thought logistics and trucking were one and the same, but you're telling me they're not.
Correct. Trucking is what they call asset base. And that's when you own the assets, the tractors, the trailers, you employ the drivers. Or you might even employ owner-operators, which is truckers that own their own truck. So that's the asset base. It used to be if somebody gave you a load and you didn't have your own truck, you would start looking around for somebody else that was looking for that load. Back in the 70s, we started doing that. At the time, it was called trip leasing. There's a very, very bulky process by which you did huge contracts for one load going from A to B. Once deregulation hit, brokerage came about. They just took the same trip lease concept and called it brokering, which meant you just found another truck with a lot less paperwork. From that, brokers started becoming more sophisticated, and that's where the term logistics came in. Logistics can also include warehousing. It can include many of the paperwork situations like billing the customer, collecting from the customer, even down to analytics as well.
Oh, wow.
So some of the bigger logistics companies, C.H. Robinson, where my son worked for, they just have a myriad of services that are over and beyond just moving that freight from A to B. We're starting to get more involved in that ourselves. We're starting to offer more services. Like we had the dry van, we went to the flatbed. We're doing the LTL. We have the warehousing. We've not been successful yet at some of the other services, but we're in our infancy of that, and we are trying to get more involved in a C.H. Robinson type model.
So my father was a part-time truck driver, and now I'm forgetting the exact name of what they called this, but sometimes he would get called to go to like maybe a warehouse, and he would have to, I don't know if they call it busing or setting, or gosh, what the heck did they call that? You know what I'm talking about, where they go and you're kind of in charge of telling the trucks where to go? Or
dispatching.
Maybe dispatching?
Dispatching.
Is that part of logistics, or is that more of the trucking?
It's both.
It's both?
Yeah, it's just basically you're the guy that's telling the driver where to go, or you may even be the guy that made the decision of what driver or what piece of equipment is going.
Okay, because I know sometimes it seemed to be this trucking company, they would run dispatch for certain factories or warehouses.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so I didn't
and
know
that also is a service of logistics as well.
Okay, I thought maybe that fell into that category, because that's a little bit beyond the whole, A to B, getting the freight from A to B. It's a little bit past that, right?
And you've got another service that can be offered. A lot of, matter of fact, when you go up 57, you'll see it up there by Monee, these large warehouses with these hundreds and hundreds of trailers sitting out there. So now you've got to have some sort of a truck that can shuttle those trailers inside, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
And that's one of the. You asked about a trucking story. That's one of the stories.
Okay.
Long time ago, there was a company called Bennett Industries up in Peatone. And I hope the guy that did this is listening. I got sent up there as a 18-year-old kid, and backing is a little tough sometimes, especially if you're not good at it, backing your trucks. But that was my job that day, is to move their trailers in and out of docks.
Oh, man.
And it was not going too bad on the west side of the building, but every fourth trailer, I'd have to come back around to the north side of the building and back in at an angle, and it was their paint dock. It was kind of tough backing in at an angle and getting around it back there. But some wise guy, every time while I was gone, would roll a 55-gallon drum of paint in front of that dock. They were evidently messed with me. So when I'd come around there, and I weighed about 145 pounds at the time, soaking wet, I'd have to get out of the truck and bodily move that 55-gallon
That's full,
barrel out.
Absolutely full, right?
Yep, absolutely full. It was pretty tough.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And because I was not a very, very efficient at backing, it was taking me longer. So I missed coffee breaks, I missed lunch, and just to keep up. And sure enough, every fourth, fifth time around, bingo, there's that drum again. Into the day, and I'm dog tired. And I should have prefaced this conversation by saying it was an old beater of a truck I was driving, and we had just painted it that weekend. But at the end of the day, I'm dog tired, and last trailer of the day, we had to go to that paint dock. I come around that corner, and sure enough, there was that barrel out there again. I'm too tired to move it. So I thought, I wonder if I could move this with a bumper.
Oh, no.
So I'm going along, trying to move that darn thing with the bumper. All of a sudden, it come around and hit the stud on the wheel, and paint exploded everywhere on that truck that they had just painted. And the bill on that paint was more than what we billed the customer that day to move trailers all day.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Did you ever find out why that 55-gallon drum of paint kept appearing there? Did you ever figure that out?
Some guy seen a kid up there and he was just gonna mess with him all day.
And you never saw like the person move it there?
Never did.
No.
Never did. But you know what? Somebody had to be doing it on purpose.
Yeah, you would think so. I can't imagine what other purpose that would serve.
I was a long-haired, baby-faced, skinny kid. I'm sure maybe the guy didn't like long hairs. I did.
Well, that could be. That could be. That age and time definitely could be a possibility.
And I looked like at the time I looked like I was about 12. So
it's like, what's this kid doing here? So I'm curious to hear, what does it take to be a truck driver? What are the things a person has to go through nowadays? I mean, I know it's changed so much, the CDL process and everything.
Sure. There is a definite procedure that written and road test that a driver has to pass to get a CDL. You can get a CDL at 18, but you can't go over interstate lines till you're 21.
So you can't go into a different state?
Correct.
Okay.
And a lot of the insurance companies frown on truckers younger than 25 or 23 due to lack of experience. So you got that hurdle always going on. But there is a bill sitting before Congress to allow 18-year-olds to go over the state lines. Some of the big carriers are pushing it.
Because they're short on people, right?
Because they're short on truck drivers. We're kind of ambivalent about it. We don't know whether we like that idea. I mean, I drove at 18. My nephew Todd drove at 18. A lot of guys did, but kind of a different world back then too.
Yes.
Kids back then had more responsibility than the average computer programmer now.
Yes, I suppose, if it does get passed and an 18-year-old is able to pass state lines, then if you're interviewing someone for that position, you might just go through some extra process of screening them, right? And being
Correct.
like, okay, what's this guy really like? Is he the 18-year-old that I was, and I can trust him or her, whoever it is, to get this across state lines?
Well, it always seemed like farm kids made the best.
Oh, sure.
The best drivers, the younger ones. But nowadays, you pretty much have had, if you decide you want to be a truck driver, you pretty much have had to go to a school, whether it's like the KCC, college driving school, or some of your bigger carriers have their own schools, Schneider, JB Hunt's, places like that. And you need to go, that's usually a 6 to 8 week process to get that. We're not going to take you unless you've had some sort of schooling and have graduated through that. Then we take, even if you have, we make you ride second seat with a driver for a period of about 6 weeks as well. And we make sure you get mountain driving and hopefully some hazardous condition driving. We've got 4 or 5 drivers that we pay extra that will teach drivers, and we don't let them on the road until that driver has said yes, he or she is capable of doing it.
Yeah.
And then they're handed over to the dispatchers, who are told, don't be putting this driver in situations that are going to be critical. We really try to work with them to make sure that they're going to work out for the long term.
Yeah, you don't want to put the hardest task on their shoulders right away.
But you wouldn't believe how many times a driver recruit will go out on the first long trip with a driver trainer, and when he gets back, he quits.
Yeah, they just can't handle the long.
They didn't envision that in doing it. They just can't do that, being away from home.
Honestly, it's kind of like, to me, the way I see it, I've never driven a truck across the state, but I've gone long distances on tours as a musician, and it's kind of like being on a ship, and you're gone for a long time, and you hope you make it home, and I feel like it's got to be kind of similar to that, where you're out at sea almost. And,
sure.
And you got all these things you got to go through, and you have to have the inconvenience of not being 5 minutes away from home to be able to fix this situation.
Exactly. Can you imagine the pressure that puts you? Now, think about this. Being an over-the-road truck driver and all the news on COVID is breaking.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah, can I touch that gas handle?
Mm-hmm.
Do I use this restroom? And then after that, everybody started closing things down, and here you're out there. It was. We really had to stay on top of our game to make sure was able to get them to places where they could interact and get something to eat or go to sleep.
Yeah, that must have been hard, because it's like, I want to go to Love's, to a Love's somewhere, a truck stop, because I want to take a shower, or I want to,
exactly.
But I can't. It's closed.
Exactly. And that brings up another point that I'd like to make. We were on our way home from the golf course yesterday, 4 of us, and we turned off there in the Bourbonnais Parkway, and they're building a new truck stop. And one of the guys made a joke, "Oh, geez, there goes another truck stop." And I said, guys, there aren't enough truck stops. We need more truck stops, because for a long time now, there has not been enough areas for drivers to park and sleep at night. If you ever go by a rest area at night, it's packed with trucks.
Yeah, you can't get in there.
Exactly. And on some of the bigger cities, they charge the trucks to sleep there. Or you have to show that you bought something there. And I can understand the owner of a truck stop wanting to make sure you bought something there. But we need more areas for truck drivers to be able to sleep at night.
Yeah. Well, just think about you could probably tell me the amount of years. Think about how many years Kankakee County went without a truck stop.
Sure.
I mean, how many? Because obviously we had truck stops years ago.
I worked at one.
Yeah. But then there was, a good 20, 30 year or maybe longer? Or at least 20 years.
I would say at least 20 years. To be honest with you, I don't remember that. And it's in the same spot there. It was the old Skelly truck stop on the south side of town. I worked there for a couple years as a kid.
And that's what is Love's now, right? Just
that's
south
where
of
Love's
Kankakee.
is at now.
Yeah, so that was the first truck stop in Kankakee County since like the last one, because the nearest one then would be Monee.
You had Monee and Gilman.
Yeah. So, and that's a good stretch.
That is a good stretch.
And that's, again, pointing out where do they sleep? You don't have enough spaces for them. And there's you got a rest stop, you got a rest stop in Monee. And then the next rest stop is, I don't know, going south on 57. It's a while. And
you think about the rest stops, they closed those for COVID, and I think it was a year. Well, I think they were, if I remember right, weren't they? There was construction on them that were closed before COVID, and they never opened them up because of COVID.
I know they were working on particularly the Monee rest stop on 57 for a long time, and I think they're still working on one of the sides of it right now. And it seems like it takes them forever, but it's good to see that we are getting some more truck stops in Kankakee County.
I think the Ricky Rockets, I think they're working there as well.
Yeah, and you got the one in Grant Park now.
Yep.
So, and then, the Road Ranger is the one on Bourbonnais Parkway.
Is that what it is?
I think it's Road Ranger. But, going cross country and A.N. Weber, like, you don't do any really regional stuff. It's mostly cross country. Oh, no,
right? we do a little bit of everything.
You do? Okay, so there is some local and regional
We've got a couple of trucks that do nothing, go back and forth between Kankakee and Chicago.
Okay.
We got one guy that's been doing it for, I think Derek's been 25 years, just Kankakee to Chicago now. We have a truck that never leaves Kankakee hardly at all. Then there's trucks that do run some regional. That's within a 3 or 4 state area, which I can tell you from experience is probably some of the toughest trucking there is. And then we got the long, but yes, sir, we do have a lot of long distance and that is predominantly out of the other terminals. The Kankakee terminal is more local and regional. The others are long distance.
Yeah.
In El Paso, Texas, if you're there, it's 300 miles to the next big city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're in Texas, and El Paso's all the way at the border.
Exactly.
So, I mean, yeah.
That's an interesting story down there that A.O. Smith tapped into. It's called a maquiladora system, and it has something to do with the taxing laws in Mexico, whereas they can produce material there, but they don't want it stored there. So they produce it in Juarez or other Mexican cities, and they bring it across the United States right away and put it in various warehouses. And that allowed for shippers or manufacturers to take advantage of the Mexican labor. And while people probably have issues with that, it did come in the States, and it did go out to other areas. I mean, and the people that were critics of us doing it, if we didn't do it, somebody else was going to haul it.
Mm-hmm.
It's heck, I've heard since that they start taking it out of Mexico and going to China, but now I'm hearing a lot of that's coming back. And if I were to put my other hat on for my podcast, it should come back. But that's a rant for another day.
That's for Weber's Whipping Post
exactly.
podcast. Yeah. That Alan hosts, plug that. So going back to, the life of a truck driver, getting that CDL, they got to have, be a certain age and so much experience and things like that. What are some of the other things that a truck driver faces with? Because I know there is a law in place. You can only be on the road for so many hours at a time.
Correct.
But I'm not sure what else there is besides that. And it's is it 18 hours or is it less than that?
Yeah, you can only be on the 8 days and 70 hours. And it's from a daily standpoint, it's 11 hours a day driving and 5 hours not driving. Other issues they do face is, weather is a big issue. The winter driving is tough with an 18-wheeler, especially when you get out west and you got the various passes and stuff. Another thing is they don't teach the general public how to drive around a truck. It takes a long time for a truck to stop, especially if he's got 40,000-pound load on it, and the drivers of cars go in and out too fast around trucks. And we send a truck down to Central High School for the driving school kids to be able to sit in it and walk around it and see it. I'd like to think, hopefully, that some kids will understand that you can't do it. And you see a lot of people messing with trucks.
Oh yeah.
They're also our trucks are governed, their speed, and if you're a single solo driver, 68, and we allow the teams to go 70 because they're on more time-sensitive freight. But that puts them in a situation sometimes when they go out to pass somebody and now they can't get around them, which upsets a lot of people. But do you really want a truck doing being able to do 80 miles an hour?
Yeah, and some of them do, of course, but
more and more, those kinds are being weeded out because you lose so much fuel mileage. Also, even with the best of engines, you get up to 70 mile an hour, and you start losing fuel mileage. And we fight for every mile we can get out of a truck, or every gallon, I should say.
Yeah.
Another thing about truckers is they don't really eat right in general.
It's hard.
It's very hard to eat right. And, you go into the truck stops and they got fast food restaurants now. A lot of them don't have the big, nice restaurants that they used to have. And, there's a lot of overweight truck drivers. I think I read a stat one time where truck drivers' average lifespan He was like 5 years less than the average man.
I can believe that.
Yep. And I think that their diet has a lot to, and they're sitting for long periods of time as well.
Right. That's also not good for you.
I would like to see restaurants go back to truck stops go back to the nice restaurants that they used to have, but it seems like the trend is going the other way.
It's all about cost, right?
Correct. It's all about cost.
Going back to what you were saying about the general public not knowing how to drive around a truck, I think, if I remember correctly, being told when I was going through, driver's ed as a 16-year-old, if you're behind a truck and you can't see their side mirrors, then they can't see you, I think is what I was told. I know that was one thing that I can think of. Are there any other tips that you can think of that you can, for someone that maybe doesn't know?
If there's if a truck's got his right hand turn signal on, don't go up beside it. That's probably the biggest accident you get is where the car driver snuck in beside him and he went to make the turn and now he's taking out the left front corner.
Yeah, because they're taking that big, they got to take a much more room to make that turn. Exactly.
I mean, a tractor trailer now is 65 feet. And there's a blind spot in the mirrors. If you don't have all the mirrors, there can be a blind spot in the mirrors right below the passenger side door fuel tank. So that probably causes more accidents than anything right there.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to get out about trucking, logistics, or A.N. Weber history that you can think of?
Our company's got a sterling reputation for honesty and doing the right thing. And we've never taken shortcuts. Well, except the first time when I'd go over to Indiana before I was 21.
Well, we'll let that one slide since it was so many years ago.
The logbooks, it's all. The driver doesn't fill out a logbook anymore. He punches a code in. The truck takes care of that. So you don't have drivers out there like in the old days. They're stretched out well beyond his logbook. I like to think that the pills and all that have all gone away. Drivers were known for taking pills in the 60s and 70s
to stay
keep
awake.
Yeah. I like to think that's all been taken out of there with the logbook issue taken care of. And there are still companies out there that do that, but for the most part, the industry has cleaned itself up tremendously. Absolutely tremendously. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that as an industry we have done that. I like to think that we were doing it long before anybody else. I guess I don't really know that, but I do know that we over the years we've gotten a lot of accolades. And just the fact that we were able to maintain a relationship for A.O. Smith for 56 years, that's kind of unheard of when you got a shipper-carrier relationship that's gone on that long.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got to be doing something right, and we understand each other. We understand what they want and can do it.
Well, and it's really cool to think that even though the factory that was here closed down, there's still a piece of A.O. Smith here that lives within Weber.
Sure is.
So it's kind of cool that yes, they left, but there's still a chunk of them here with you guys. So,
and out there in the entryway at South Tech, when you come in, on the wall is some of the when we took over, some of the pictures we found of them, of the lines and stuff that they used. And we had them all framed and put up with. Maybe they had to put a water heater up out there too, or something.
Yeah, find an old water heater and put it up there. Yeah, make it a statue or something. That'd be funny. My great grandfather, on my grandma Lamore's side, her dad retired from there, and I have when he retired, he received a tie clip that says, I think it says AOS on it.
Okay.
I've got it though,
Yep.
but yeah, he they gave him a tie clip. Said, "Here you go, congratulations." I forget how many years he put in there. It's between 20 and 30, I think. So he retired in the 70s, I believe. So
Wow.
right before they left town, of course. So
And we were from Shabance, and about half the town of Shabance all worked at A.O. Smith as well back then. So.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people did. We kind of plugged, you personally, if people are interested, you do have a conservative podcast that people can check out called Weber's Whipping Post.
Thank you.
People can check that out. There's also your blog that goes along with that too, weberswhippingpost.com. That's aside from, the business and everything.
My own podcast, which youth, thank you, produce.
I'm happy to do it, and thank you for allowing me to do that. And then, of course, what is A.N. Weber's website?
It's www.anweber.com. And then logistics, it's anweberlogistics.com.
And Weber's 2 B's, by the way.
Correct, 2 B's.
Yeah.
The English version, not the German version.
Okay. That was a question I was going to ask you, because I'm sure I have Weber in my blood too, but it's 1 B.
1 B.
And not, so 2 B's is technically English.
Correct.
Okay.
Matt Weaver. My understanding is that a guy by the name of John Weber left England and went to Virginia and back in the 1600s, and we all spread out after that.
Okay. All right. That's cool. That explain that helps me understand that, because I never really understood that before. Anything else? Any other plugs or anything you want to get out there?
I do have another book coming out.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And it'll be my second novel. It's kind of a sequel to the first one. It's called Roll Me Away, and hopefully it's going to be out sometime this month. Okay. It's another novel about a trucker that, and I built a story around, an action story around a day-to-day, everyday trucker. Okay. So it's fiction. It's fiction. But it's sort of loosely based, I'm sure, on some experiences or stories that you know of. Right? And lots of historical data of the country, not trucking, and of the Southwest. Okay. Cool. Well, look for that to come out as well, and congratulations on that. Well, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Since I became semi-retired, that's what I love to write. Yeah. That's what I do. I like to write all day. Yeah, and you do that between the book and the blogs and bad golf. And bad golf. Yeah. But, although it sounds like your golf game has gotten a little bit better. Oh, no. It's the opposite. I'm in a 2-year slump. But I thought you had some lessons or some tips recently, and you were starting to do a little better. Well, that lasted one round. Oh, okay. Gotcha. One round in a row. Oh, okay. I had hope for you that you were. It was like a good longevity thing. No, my handicap just getting higher and higher. That's well, it's better than mine because I don't even play. So, all right. Well, thank you, Alan, once again. Well, thanks a million for having me. I hope you found it enjoyable. Yeah, I definitely answered some of my questions about trucking and logistics. So, and I think people find it fascinating as well. So. Well, thank you. This river carries on.